All right, hello, lovely Patreon parishioners. Today, for our bonus content this week, we are talking a little bit more about the Tabernacle. And I know that up to this point, everything's been uncompromisingly confusing, I would say. Would you get on board with me with that description?
That's a nice choice of words.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Not only is the difficulty of trying to figure out the word problem of like, wait, what are they referring to? And also needing some carpentry knowledge and some like forging knowledge and some, all kind like architecture knowledge in order to figure out what they're actually referring to. And everything's in cubits and it's hard. So I found for me, it's like, yes, I've seen the conceptual images that people have made of the tabernacle, but it's hard for me to really get a sense of like what it actually was like or actually felt like. And I found that in the Timnah Valley, which is in Israel, which is a valley that's known for being an archaeological site as it is, like they've discovered a lot of stuff here. Someone has kind of made a tourist park and also built this like to scale model of the tabernacle. Yeah, so I'm sharing a video with the two of you right now. If you go on YouTube and you just look for tabernacle model and then type in Timnah, Timnah, you can see this video that kind of walks you through this full-scale model. They're
far less
explaining
grand than I expected it to be.
Right. So in the video, they just showed the fact that it's like the tabernacle itself was only 150 feet by 75 feet, which is still, it's big for a tent.
When you say model, to me that implies small, but this is like full scale.
No, scale model, full scale model. Yes.
What makes it a model and not actually just a tent? Because I'm a little confused about that.
Well, gosh, what a deep question. I guess because they're trying to like exactly recreate it. I did read.
It's a replica.
It's a replica. It's not made out of biblical materials.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense then.
Yeah.
I see this
so
video
just kind of
does say blue, purple, scarlet, white. If it said blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen, then I'd be on board.
Then you'd be in. Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of interesting. You can go to this park and you can kind of walk in there, zooming in on the like silver lintels or whatever the heck it was. There's the altar out front that has its horns, which they have conveniently painted with dripping blood on the horns. I guess those are like the flesh hooks or the meat hooks or something.
No, those are just the horns that part of the anointing was pouring the blood on them. Oh,
you're right.
The flesh hooks are something else because those were made out of brass.
What's that? The bronze laver?
Yeah, so I believe that was like, it was like this basin that was set outside the tabernacle where you would like wash yourself or the priests would wash themselves.
It says made from brass mirrors. So this was from those mirrors of the women outside the tent.
That they stole from those ladies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can walk inside the tent, and they decorated it with some cherubim on the curtains, just like they said that they would.
They look like people with their hands up.
Yeah, it's kind of some interpretive cherubim paintings, I believe.
Yeah, I guess I assumed these were like very elaborate embroidered cherubim, but maybe they were sort of more iconographic in like they are here.
Right. And so they're explaining that the holy place itself, where the priests would be hanging out and where like the menorah and like these smaller altars and stuff that we heard about, that's only 15 by 30 feet. So it's actually fairly cozy on the inside.
30.
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be Aaron? Oh, yeah, that's Aaron because he's got his little breastplate on.
Yeah.
They have these little mannequins dressed up in, the priestly garments. As they would. They have their replica of the menorah.
Wow. Look at how beaten that gold is.
Yeah, it's definitely some beaten gold.
Wow, what are those?
That's like
some food?
The bread sitting out. That was part of the offering.
They have the bread sitting out.
Bread?
Yep.
Yeah. And so they even take you into like the Holy of Holies, like back behind the very special curtain where the Ark of the Covenant
I didn't think we were
is going to be.
Here.
Yeah, I think you're technically not.
Ark?
Yeah, this is, it's not the Ark. But just to show you, like, if we convert it out of cubits, they say, like, they kind of translate to the Ark of the Covenant is 45 by 27 by 27 inches.
Yeah, that looks pretty close to what it was in Indiana.
So, another way,
the standard,
like 4 feet long, and then like a little over 2 feet wide and tall.
Yeah, exactly. And conveniently, they've even put a little replica of the Ten Commandments inside
there.
the
With
ark.
with a little branch that's
Yeah.
blooming.
Yeah.
I don't know
It's
what that
cute.
branch is about. Yeah.
Anyway, so this video is really interesting because it reminds me of
Sorry, this freeze frame you just stopped
Aaron's
us
rod.
on just says Aaron's rod, and that's
great.
pretty good.
It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful.
Anyway, when I was reading about this particular park, the Timnah Valley Park, there is some controversy around it because it doesn't count as like one of Israel's national parks. And so it's been developed just like into a tourist site. So they're like building a luxury hotel there and like a resort there and stuff like that. And it is really interesting. I've been to Israel only once. I went in 2015 and I enjoyed my time there. You know, I was in Tel Aviv and I was also in Jerusalem, but it definitely really struck me just the level of how intense the biblical tourism scene is there.
Yeah, that's
or
interesting.
Just the religious tour. Like that was the thing that was like both intriguing and also really off-putting at the same time.
Understandably.
And for me personally as well, because being there, it was like from a historical, archaeological point of view, it's like, wow, it's really interesting to be at the Wailing Wall, you know, just from a history standpoint, or it's really interesting to be at like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre just from a history standpoint. But then on top of it, me also having to confront like, oh, these are all these things that like I was taught as a child. These are very real stories, and these are the places where they actually supposedly took place. And then also on top of it, like just buses and buses and buses and buses of tour groups of all different faiths, right? Like all different Judeo-Christian faiths, just going around, seeing all these places, people being like so emotional or so moved, or like stopping to pray in the middle of the street, or stopping to sing in the middle of the street, just being like, this is so weird.
I'm sure for a lot of people, it's incredibly moving and meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my mother like walked into St. Patrick's Church on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and like she raised me and is very much not a biblical person or a religious person, and yet like she like sat down and like cried at all of the people praying because it was very moving to her, like their feeling of emotion regarding all that, which I found very interesting.
I cried at the Wailing Wall. That was the weirdest thing, is I was like, okay, I'll go down here and like kind of touch it, and it's like, but they're like people around you like bawling and like sobbing, and I don't know if it's like a weird like psychology thing of like there's a bunch of humans around me crying and so it makes it easier to cry, but I was definitely like really struck. And then also I guess just like with the meaning behind it, or like the meaning that's been projected onto it. But yeah, being in Jerusalem was definitely like a weird experience full of a lot of emotion, and I still don't even know how I feel about it, but it is interesting watching this video of just like, I don't know, I guess the profit to be found in kind of taking advantage of people coming to the Holy Land for some kind of experience. I mean, Jace, I don't know what your experience was going to church growing up, but I know my church experience was like, if someone had been to the Holy Land, that was like next level. Like they got a gold star if they were a Christian that had like paid for a tour to Israel or Jerusalem or whatever. It was like you got extra points for that. I don't know if that was something you picked up on as a child.
I don't, maybe just people from my church didn't do that, but no, I don't remember any specific association with that being like a big deal. I mean, obviously any kind of travel to me would have been a big deal at the time, but there wasn't, we didn't really have that kind of community of that being a big deal. Maybe this is terrible, but I almost feel like more the association with people who went to the Holy Land it was just my Jewish friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, people do their birthright tours and stuff like that.
But I almost want to say it was like only my Jewish friends, like in high school.
Oh, interesting.
And so to me, that it's almost like that wasn't a thing Christians did. It's like that's just a thing Jews would do. I don't know. That's a weird thing to think looking back.
No,
I'd never even considered it.
I don't think that's that weird to think, because to be fair, like my parents definitely ran in a crowd of like, I called it the Jewish fan club. It was like Christians that wanted to be Jewish, I feel, or like they really associated with like Messianic Jews, like Jews for Jesus.
Right.
Like they had a lot of friends who were Jews for Jesus. And so my parents, and therefore like the context that I grew up in, was very much kind of like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of like respecting the Jews as like the chosen people, and the Christians are kind of in the same boat, but like we really need to respect them and their religion because they were like kind of the
Originals, the
originate
OG.
exactly. They were the OG,
Right.
but also at the same time, it was kind of like appropriating a lot of like Jewish religion.
Right.
It was like a combination of like, yeah, I don't know. I know it made me uncomfortable as a child because I remember even as a child being like, we're not Jewish.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's really interesting.
These aren't our traditions to be taking part in, and it being kind of confusing to me why there was this phase for a while when they were like so into this. But
Yeah.
maybe that's why it made my journey to Israel so complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
understandably.
I could see that for sure. So the thing that I looked into here was we talked a little bit earlier about like who wrote the Bible, like the authors or of Exodus, I mean. And so I was kind of curious and looked into it a little more, and we had learned before that like different writers of the Bible are given like little letters that kind of stand for them, like, and they have weird names like this is like the priestly source, and they'll be designated with a P, or
Right. Last time we talked
Huh.
about the Yahwist.
right, there's the Yahwist, yeah. So stuff like that. And so apparently this priestly source, P, was accredited for writing like the stuff about the tabernacle, about the tent of meeting and stuff like that. But in looking into this, I was looking at just this kind of idea of Moses being the author of the Torah, basically of the first 5 books of the Bible. And what was kind of interesting that I found out here is that essentially the society that produced the Hebrew Bible, authorship was not important. Like that was not a thing that they thought about, and that's why there's no authors attributed to any of these early books. And this is saying that only after around 300 BCE, when the Jews became in contact with the Greeks, and in Greek culture, authorship is a big deal, right? That's why like we know the names of these Greek authors, like Plato or whatever,
Ovid and
right?
Plato and yeah.
Right. So authorship was a big deal.
Euripides.
Yes.
And so apparently, in response to this, the rabbis were like, we need to figure out who the authors are of our books so that we can talk about them and they can be respected within this new community that we're connecting to. And so they ended up identifying Moses as being the one. And apparently, one of the factors is the fact that there are a lot of passages in it in which Moses is compelled to write something by God.
Interesting.
For example, the 10 Commandments, being like, come up here and you're going to write this stuff down that I tell you.
So it's like he's the designated byline.
Right.
Designated by Yahweh. Interesting.
So even though he's not writing the whole book, they're sort of like, well, he was the one who was told to write stuff, so maybe him.
There are only 5 books in the Old Testament?
Just in the Torah. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are the Torah.
Are the Torah? Oh,
Yeah.
I thought that wow, I really got that wrong. I thought that the whole Old Testament was the Torah.
Nope.
No, yeah. I had that misunderstanding before as well.
So that's the thing is
the
book of Job is not in the Torah. It's much later in the Old Testament.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Leviticus is.
Yes. Leviticus
and
is
then
the 3rd book.
Deuteronomy?
No, it goes in the Torah is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's the 5 books.
Okay. Wow. So then when we're done with that, we're done with the Torah. That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thought the whole dang thing.
And the Torah, the reason why that grouping of books is so significant is that these first 5 books of the Old Testament, which are the whole Torah, are the story of the origins and the foundations of the culture of the Hebrews, of the Jews. So that's why that group of books is so important. And I think we'll see an interesting shift once we finish the Torah, that then things are going to kind of shoot off in other directions. Whereas for now, we've been relatively focused, or I mean, pretty much completely focused on like, these are the stories of this lineage of people establishing their traditions. Like in this, we learned about Passover and we learned about the unleavened bread stuff and like a lot of the judicial traditions and kind of how the society is put together. And so we're going to continue to get that sort of stuff through the Torah and like, what's the history of these people? What's their deal?
I'm really interested, since we're doing this from a chronological standpoint, if that's going to change like we're doing the chronological reading, right?
Yeah.
So that it's
Yeah.
not just, if that's going to like take us away from a book into a different book and then back again. There and back again, as it were.
It's going to take us into The Hobbit. Can you even imagine?
Hey, I just finished those 3 movies. They were movies.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if they were good movies, but they were movies.
I rewatched them over the Christmas break. They're great
The
movies.
Hobbit?
What are you talking about?
The Hobbit movies or the Lord of the
No.
Rings?
The Hobbit movies.
Lord of the Rings.
I watched those
different.
too.
No, see, Emily's
No,
talking about
Dedeker.
the Hobbit
Lord of the
ones.
Rings is completely different, and yes, those are phenomenal movies, but The Hobbit is just a movie.
Anyway, getting away from Tolkien, to answer your question, in this chronological reading order, we're going to go straight to Leviticus, straight through to Numbers. So it
Okay.
looks like, just to give you a little preview, we're going to go straight through Leviticus, straight through Numbers. About halfway through Numbers, we're going to jump to Psalm 90 and read Psalm 90.
Psalm 90.
Just the one. Okay.
Just the one, and then keep
go
on
back?
keeping on. Then we're going to keep on keeping on. Yeah, back to Numbers. That's
That's
interesting.
incredibly random.
And then
but
do we
When we
go
get
on
to that,
to Deuteronomy?
I mean, okay.
We got to know. Are
look.
we going to complete the whole?
Yeah, we got to know. It's going to be Numbers, Deuteronomy, yes. And then, at the very end of Deuteronomy, we hop to Psalm 91. That's so interesting.
See,
We're going to
so
have to
90
do
and
some
then
research
91.
on why that is.
Yeah,
that's super random.
that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I'm looking forward to this, and I can't wait to like continue on because the next episode is it for Exodus. I feel like we've been here for a long time, but we're almost done. Stay
Woo.
with us. Come back.
Come back to us.
Come back, please.